canvassers started?
We are currently convening the meeting of our Board of Canvassers. We'll do the introductions after we finish this. This is just a simple approval of the certification of the election. We'll accept the motion to certify the election of David Strobin as State Senator in the 27th Senatorial District at the March 20th, 2012 special election.
So moved?
So moved.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried? Thank you. We will now move to the regular.
And we've just signed the certificates.
Certificates are signed.
Mine seems to run out of ink.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Walsh. It's my honor to be conducting our meeting today, and our fellow commissioners will be introducing themselves right now.
I'm Douglas Kellner.
Evelyn Aquila.
And Gregory Peterson.
And our staff around the board, please.
Todd Valentine.
Kimberly Galvin.
Paul Collins.
Joe Burns.
John Conklin.
Tom Connolly.
Bill McCann.
Liz Hogan.
Bob Brem.
Bob Warren, election operation.
Thank you all. First item of business, the minutes of the previous meeting. Have a motion?
I move that we approve them as drafted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Executive Committee report, Bob Brem.
It's been, we're still processing, things with regards to the move, so that continues. We've settled, parking for the staff, to a large measure, I should say. But we're still settling in on that, and at this point, we're getting ready, get the office, to make sure that it's properly configured for the petition filing for next month. To that end, we're still having issues with regards to getting the enrollments done because there were changes in redistricting and counties making changes to their own local redistricting, which prohibited them from getting their enrollments done in the time that we would have liked in a reconfigured manner. I mean, we're still using the April 1st enrollment date, so we're not adding voters, but having them in the right spot has been the problem, or in the right new districts. But we think we're almost there. Yeah, that's where we're at, Bob.
I think the only other, in addition to all of the political change that's happening this year and calendars, et cetera, and moving the agency, the state's new fiscal system change has been a challenge for all of us, and to some extent maybe to you at some point for travel. We had all of the staff that would have to submit vouchers under the new system trained here. It was nice that OGS came over here and did that level of training, but it's a new system, and every time Tom and Colleen from the admin office try and do something that we think is the way we're supposed to do it under the new process, there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of back and forth. So they're struggling with the new system, to learn it and to get the right instructions as to how to carry things out. We did ask for a slightly higher level of training for them, and I know that they're trying to schedule it around all of the other activities to when would it work best for them. But ideally, it's going to change the way we've been doing business drastically, and getting everything vouchered and the record keeping that goes with it. It does take a little bit longer for the work we used to do, just because of the learning curve. And frankly, the system's been down a little bit for the last couple of weeks. When we go to do something, you get a message, it's down, we're fixing something. So with any new system this big, there's a learning curve, and the staff are really working at keeping it up to date. And it's not quite as frustrating as when we didn't know if we had parking until the night before it got fixed, which was the day we were getting. We knew the old parking space was not going to be in there, but it was the last part of the restacking, and for the most part, I don't think we're hearing complaints, so it seems to be working.
Say that.
We'll get to the IT report.
Other than that, I think it's just the normal getting ready for the next round of activity that's coming our way.
Thank you. Legal, Kim Galvin, please.
Thank you, Commissioner. Our report doesn't seem that detailed, but we've been very busy in the unit. I think the only thing that we have to add to the written portion is that we have begun answering all the ballot access questions for the upcoming September primary. As you are aware, petition circulation began, and the filing dates are coming sooner than we can recognize. And also the June congressional primary, we're having a lot of questions on that. And what we're also trying to do is we ran into some problems with spec checking last time around by our staff. It just seemed to be, it took longer because every couple of years when you get the specific objections in, people have to relearn the process because it's certainly not something they do in their normal course of their job. So we're taking some time, and we're gonna put together detailed instructions on when you see a certain spec, how to look it up, so there's a consistent flow through the agency, and do some training with the staff before the next set of filings comes in. But other than that, do you have anything to add, Paul?
Yes, since we filed our written report, the Court of Appeals denied leave in the 3rd CD district
Oh,
at Tolda
Tolda.
case. So that's done. Also, since we filed the written report, the Department of Justice responded to our request for pre-clearance of the TDP, which is an acronym for Technical Data Package, on the ES&S system, saying we don't really need to pre-clear this. So that's good. So we're all up to snuff with them, and the only outstanding issue we have with the pre-clearance is the political calendar, which we keep making minuscule changes to as things go on. Still hasn't been finally and formally approved. Other than that, the rest of it is all in the written report, as we say each and every month.
What is the current status of New York City's compliance with the Help America Vote Act?
We've been sending them their monthly, approximately a monthly list of duplicates, felons, and deceased voters. To the best of my knowledge and the reports that I've seen and to what I can understand, and asking questions, they are fairly, if not very, compliant with regard to felon and deceased maintenance. With the duplicates, they sent out their last mail check, if you will, to resolve some of the duplicate work in January. They're due to send their next one in July. New York City feels as though when you're within a certain amount of days of an election that you have to keep your registration list static, if you will. We've explained that to the Department of Justice, and they don't really seem to have a problem with it. So I would say that the manual adjustments to the list have been certainly up to date with deceased and felons, and the duplicates, they've done some, but not a great deal of work in that regard.
And roughly how many duplicates are unresolved at this time?
It's in the thousands,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I don't have an exact number, but if I recall, because each is a static block, so you have to add the number of unresolved together. And I know that certain counties are in the thousands amongst themselves, so I don't know what the total number is.
And I think the only other issue is that at times when we get the numbers back from them, it's hard to tell in a month where they're doing processing how many duplicates were purged, because they may have been actually reviewed but then deemed not a duplicate.
Right.
But we don't know how many of those there are. So we know how many duplicates we've flagged and sent to them.
And we know how many are left over, but we don't know of that number that's left over,
Whether
those
or
that have
not-
been actually resolved or just weren't looked at. So we're trying to figure out a better way to review that data.
And what's the status of the planning to have New York City join the system in real time?
My understanding that and this is what I've reported to the Department of Justice, so I hope I'm correct, that I've learned that the modification should be made and it should be running functional by the end of 2012.
Yes.
Okay.
Election Operations, Joe Burns, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Wall. Few items we, of course, processed, and you did earlier today, certify the special election in the 27th Senate District. We have received the party calls for the 6 recognized parties and distributed each of those to the county boards of elections. Revised our running for office book so as to reflect the changes in the Assembly, Senate, and Congressional District lines so that people will know where petitions need to be filed. We've been collecting enrollment figures from the county boards of elections so that we could put out the signature requirements for each of the districts. Because as you know, we've had this issue with Nysboe. We're working on the, moving forward on asset management. First round of grading is completed, and right now we're working on setting up sessions with the vendors. Continue to work on the county board reviews. In fact, Terry Breed from our office is in Essex County today on a review, and later this month she will be in Dutchess County. And I guess finally, I'd see if Bob wants to say anything about certification.
Well, we have the 2 vendors have submitted new builds for their EMS system and for their tabulators. We have the entire system for Dominion in-house now. We're testing on that. We have the EMS system for ES&S in-house, and we expect, and the Automark, and we expect the DS200 build either today or tomorrow. Both those builds contain the changes for the screens that were required for the double vote and overvote. So we're in the process of getting all that certified, and we're hoping to have something finalized by mid-July. I'm not sure when the next board meeting will be, but that's our goal, as long as we don't come up with anything major with our testing. That's what we're shooting for.
That's about it.
Do you want me to go on the ballot for you or something?
Oh, nothing really new to offer other than we continue to be in contact with the county boards of elections on their ballots for the federal primary and for the state primary.
Question?
I have a few things. Has there been any further follow-up on the counties that had anomalies with larger numbers of overvotes? Since the reports that we've received on the Bronx issue at the last meeting and earlier, I think it was Cortland County. That was Yates County.
Yates in the
Yeah,
Bronx.
we've gone through a process of looking at the results from those, and all that you can really determine is that some of it may have been based on ballot layout because of the wrapping issues. You can see on a lot of the ballots maybe a trend with the wrapping where somebody selected, they were just selecting columns and not contests. Some of them were legitimate overvotes. Nothing appeared totally out of the ordinary, but you could see where some issue may have occurred. We're starting to look at, we're going to identify 5 or 6 counties that we're going to kind of zero in on after the next primary. Hopefully we're going to get close ones by us, so until we get a process down that we can work, we can go to the counties, determine what we really want to look at, how we want to look at the data, and try to continue that process after each election to make sure there aren't any of these anomalies that come up.
Could I ask you about something?
Yes.
Do you think that the voter went in and thought that it was just straight down and voted that way, or instead of when he should have voted across, or voted across when he should have voted straight down?
No, I think it's just some people looked at it, they voted based on column. They just,
That's what I
they weren't
mean.
even looking at contests, they just
That's
saw
what I'm
name
saying,
here,
on
name here,
column.
name,
Yeah.
you know, and
That's
they
what I
just
mean.
started making
Did they go in
selections.
and say, oh, I'll vote this way when he should have been voting that way?
Yeah, I think that might have been some of the issues.
No, I can understand that happening.
And some of them looked like just legitimate overvotes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Next was with the 27th Senate District hand count. Has anyone started yet to determine an analysis of the differences between the hand count and the machine count?
Ann and I started discussing that last Thursday or Friday, I believe it was. I was out yesterday, she's out today, so we have to have a follow-up conversation to finalize how we're going to proceed with that.
All right. I would very much like the agency to have a report on that issue, because I think that data is very important
Very useful.
in terms of guiding judges and the legislature on setting up rules for how to deal with close elections.
All right, thank you all. NVRA Public Information, John Conklin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Well, the Public Information Office has been pretty busy. We have a very large volume of inquiries from the press and the public, specifically about the congressional primary on June 26th, redistricting, the changes for reapportionment, with the petition period already started. Lots of questions about that, signature requirements, things like that. Tom and I have been involved in monitoring the completion of all the updated redistricting information for the Nice voter system by the county boards. We continue to coordinate with the council's office and the county boards to collect information requested by the Department of Justice with regard to the MOVE Act from the 2010 general election. Greg and Patrick have completed board visits in Monroe, Erie, and Herkimer in May. They have additional visits scheduled for Shenango and Dutchess and Broome in June. Greg and Patrick are at an NVR training and board visit in Essex today. We posted a number of things to the website at this time of year, the political calendar for the state and local primary in September. The results of the presidential primary from April, the federal primary certification for the congressional primary, the campaign finance handbook update for 2012, the campaign finance filing calendar for 2012. We put up a link that shows who all the candidates are in all of the districts statewide for the congressional primary. And we posted updates for the running for office section of the website and the new booklet, as Joe just mentioned. So that's all I have. If there's any questions, or Tom, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, aside from the fact that we're working with getting the translations of the various documents that we need to into Bengali, which was the new identified language.
Excuse me, Tom, could you speak up?
Sure. As part of they chose Bengali, the New York City Board chose Bengali as a language to fulfill the Asian Indian requirement. So we should be getting back all the necessary documents translated into that language this week. And we'll be providing that to the city board for them to use. It did require some changes to the form, which I think we'll be taking up later on in the meeting, as far as just accompanying an additional language. And I think that, aside from that, John pretty much covered it.
Okay. John, could I ask you just an information question?
Sure.
In the telephone calls that you get, have you ever, looked to see, where they come from? Do they mostly come from just citizens? Do they come from organizations? Do they come from elected officials? Just to get an idea of who really calls in and asks these questions.
I would say the overwhelming majority is average people, average citizens asking questions. The political class does ask some questions, but they have other ways to get information.
Yes, I know that.
And most of them are experienced in that.
They can call the local,
Right. And then the rest is the press.
Okay. I was just curious, that's all.
Sure.
Thank you. Campaign finance, Liz Hogan, please.
Thank you, Commissioner. Aside from the numbers that I've given you in the unit report, I just wanted to touch upon a few things. You saw that for the July periodic, we had a new beta of the software, the revised software that has been distributed to the beta group, the testing group. There were some issues that came up as a result of the beta tests for the January periodic that we made provisions for, made some adjustments for, and put out a new beta. Don't anticipate that there'll be any problems with it, and so it should be in effect for the election reports, which actually I think is good, because the election reports, there's generally a smaller universe of filers, and, should there be any problems, I think we're in a better position to help them with a smaller application at the time. We're just wrapping up the seminars this week, actually. The staff is they're in Nassau, Suffolk, and New York City this week. Actually, Bill is going after the meeting to the city to participate and oversee the CLE presentations. 2 of the presentations of this week are CLEs. I think the CLE issue that Commissioner Kellner pushed us on for a number of years and we've implemented has worked out quite well. There's been a good interest in it, and actually we ended up having to close out the registrations for the Manhattan offering. So, I think when the seminars are finished and we do our review, we may consider, how to deal with that next year. If there's more of an interest than we were able to accommodate this year, maybe next year we can do something a little bit different to try to accommodate people. We'll discuss that in our review of that program. I did note in my report that J. Van Owens retired last month. The board does not have an investigator on staff at this time. I did reach out to the state police because they are by statute required to assist us should we need their assistance. I did reach out. I set up a liaison situation with someone at the state police. And, we have to understand that in dealing with them and their assistance are subject to their availability and their timeframes and all of those things. So I just bring it to your attention that there is a protocol in place now that we don't have an investigator at the board, but I don't yet know, because we've not utilized it yet, what that really will entail. But I certainly will update you as to that.
Excuse me, what does that mean? Are we seeking an investigator to take that position?
We
or-
have not as of yet. We have
Are we
not.
going to?
But I will certainly like to have that conversation with the co-executive directors about
Budget
what we
issue.
can do for
Yeah,
that. But
budget.
yeah, it falls just like everything else has. We have campaign finance enforcement has now 17 filled positions and 19 unfunded positions. And I don't know where that particular position will fall in that whole dynamic. I think Todd and Bob and Bill and I should have a conversation about that.
Yeah, I was asking,
But it's a-
was it being abolished, or
No,
it's still in the
it's-
budget but not funded at the moment?
That position is funded, through the rest of the fiscal year, that particular position. But the other 18 are unfunded in the budget. And so I don't know what will happen to this, but
Well, I'd hate to
we may be
lose
able to
it,
have-
because when I first came on this board, I think we had 4
well, we have
investigators.
3 positions
And then we
at this
went to
time.
3.
We have
Yeah.
3 now.
Yeah,
2 of them are unfunded, and JR's is funded through the fiscal year.
yeah.
So,
You
But
ever
I'll-
talk to the state police about somebody who's retiring?
no, I have not reached out in that way, no.
Since we work with them and they've become partners in this, they might be happy. People retire, they would make very good investigators, I think.
I haven't reached out in that way. I haven't been directed to do that, but
No.
certainly if after a discussion,
I
that's
hope
what we
this
want
board
to do.
decides to keep them on, that we have at least one. I think it would be very foolish of us not to.
And other than the things that are in the report, we just do our regular we have a continuous kind of work that we do, and we're doing it. Bill, would you like to add anything?
No, we've drafted up the enforcement calendar for the filings for the cycle for the primary and general election through January next year. That's being scheduled now, and that should be implemented relative to the July periodic and then onward. CLAs are going very well. We're getting a very positive response. I think we have to look at some logistics because we want to make sure that they're available. And then we were apprised, interestingly, by a member of the public who wanted to know why we didn't have it also available for accounting continuing legal education. I was not aware that there was such a thing, and they basically said they wanted to know whether it was an oversight on our part, and it wasn't an oversight because I didn't know it existed. But,
Very
you know,
generous of you to say that.
well, just, we were not aware of that there's a similar type of thing for CPAs, so.
Or that our presentation would
qualify
for what they're required
Right,
to
so-
to learn.
They actually are
So,
required to get more credits than the lawyers.
So
But I don't
we-
know what type of program is what I mean.
Correct, so I just don't know, but,
Right.
but anyway, I know that, as Liz pointed out, Manhattan tomorrow, we're at the board, normally we had done it at the Borough of Manhattan Community College, but it's rather expensive to conduct them there, and we're actually gonna be in the board, there's gonna be standing room only tomorrow, there's well over 80 people signed up, and that's not a big space, so, one of the things we're gonna reflect on afterwards is we really need to find a more conducive location for Manhattan, and then look at what the budgetary constraints might be. But the Borough of Manhattan Community College, for instance, is several thousands of dollars to rent the facility for the day. And so, in the past, we generally don't pay for these things, so we have to explore what some of our other options might be.
And we do not, there is no charge for the CLE credits that we're offering, so I don't know whether that, at least this year, whether that would have to be revisited if there are costs associated with putting it on. So I don't,
Yeah, but I'm loath to.
I don't
collect
know.
money, so.
No, I understand, but those are the issues that we're going to review at the end of the seminar sessions.
But the response has been very positive, and, you know, in the places that we haven't offered them, people have asked whether we would consider that. That's really a staffing and logistical issue, because you need to have an attorney who's a presenter and/or on present to do them to qualify, so, you know. But other than those things,
It's just normal,
Yep.
everyday stuff.
Thank you, Liz and Bill.
Good night. I have the impression that we're starting to fall behind again on the enforcement reports to the commissioners. Am I correct? For example, are there still 2011 cases that are open that have not yet
Yes.
been reported to us?
Yes, there
yeah,
are.
we could take a look at that.
So, you know, I would urge you to try to get back on track again, because especially where almost all of the reports are that we close the cases, that we should make those preliminary determinations early on.
Sure.
And a presidential year always gives us more, you know, it's generally, you know, it's a
Yeah, we'll get
busy
many
year.
more at the
Yes,
end of the
yeah.
year, so we don't want to be behind. So, you know, I would ask that any 2011 complaints, if you haven't had time to look at them, then just bring the files to the commissioners' meeting, and at the end of the meeting, we'll look at them and go through them quickly to triage them.
ITO.
Dan's not here today, but I'll point out, we have the new head of our new chief information officer is scheduled to start on the 21st of this month. He was top of the civil service list, so we're looking forward to that. They worked hard to, part two of the move, as we talked about, when part one was moving actually the staff from the new building to this building. Part two of the move was to take our data center from the old building and move it to now a remote location, 3 or 4 miles west of here, in another state office building. That went okay. It took a few extra days. There were a couple of, as expected, with systems that had never were built in place. You know, moving them was going to be problematic. There were a couple unforeseen things where one of the air conditioners went on fire, but they put it out.
Because
And
it didn't take anybody with it.
yeah, no, it was fine. We didn't need the police department. It just fine, but everything got moved. It was a little rocky getting back online for a couple days because it took a while for the email to come back online, the internal servers. It was admittedly as disruptive as we thought it was going to be. That was the only thing that wasn't expected, because the only thing everybody really learned was how tied into our own internal network, because you couldn't even print a document because everything runs through the network.
Through no fault of our staff, though, they worked hard at it.
But they did great. They did a great job when they moved us here, got us set up and running when we first moved the staff here, but and they consistently warned us that they couldn't guarantee everything was going to be smooth, and they were right. But overall, it's all up and functioning now, as of today. So, and now what we're going to start to look at is, and we bring the new CIO online, is, we want to look at how the roles of the staff are. I mean, obviously, budget cuts have taken an impact on that unit. We've talked about in the past. So we talked about, one of the things when we interviewed a position was somebody who could help us make that analysis and see what changes might be warranted, in shifting person to different job titles, and to try to get, as we rely more and more on the technology to deal with that. But at least, I think they did great work. So, it was rocky, but they got it done.
Thank you. Old business. A discussion on independent expenditure regulations, led by Liz and Bill.
Well, Commissioner, this, if you recall, at the last meeting, there was the draft language that had been proposed and that had been posted for comment to the Register was, again, before the board. And it was my understanding from a discussion with Commissioner Kellner that he wished to discuss with the commissioners certain changes to that language. So, do you want me?
I can go through it. That all of the public comments that we received addressed whether the draft regulation we had submitted fully met the mandate that the state legislature had given us in drafting the regulations. And in particular, the mandate was that the regulation shall require such disclosure to the fullest extent of the law. And so it really left it to us to define what the fullest extent of the law was, and the comments all indicated agreement with that much of the regulation that was drafted that defined express advocacy. But the comments also suggested that we needed to also track language that the Federal Election Commission and the New York City Campaign Finance Board have done to deal with what the jargon is now calling functional equivalents of express advocacy. And so I realize I only circulated this draft a couple of days ago and that people may need time to review it and absorb it. After reviewing the different methods that people took for functional equivalency, I thought that the best language and the best way to deal with it was to take verbatim the language from the Federal Election Commission regulations. And the reason for that is because it's been challenged in court and has withstood court challenges. And I would recommend that we include this language in our regulations so that we are meeting the mandate that the disclosure be to the fullest extent of the law, and that there not be any loopholes for avoiding the independent expenditure requirements by simply omitting the use of the express words vote, oppose, support, elect, defeat, or reject that we put forth in our regulation. And on the other hand, I think the federal language that they use does create at least some limitation, because it does require, the language says, could only be interpreted by a reasonable person as containing advocacy of the election or defeat of one or more clearly identified candidates. So I would request that the other commissioners take some time to review the regulations, and perhaps we can discuss it further at the next meeting, unless we want to talk about it today.
Thank you.
That's appropriate.
We've I was concerned about wind turbines.
Next item, new business. Vote to adopt a new version of voter registration form, including Bengali. John Conklin and Tom Conley, any comments to add to the?
Very straightforward, self-explanatory. It's
Okay.
something we've done many times with other languages. Bengali is the new voting rights language in New York City to be added, so.
I move the resolution.
Second?
I'm in favor. Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Vote on a resolution proposing certain amendments to 9 NYCRR Parts 6204 and 6209. Tim Galvin and Paul Collins.
The amendment to 6204 has to do with the elimination of the state board selecting the colors for designating petitions in the New York City Board. The statutory requirement that we do that went by the wayside more than a year or two or 10 or so years ago.
1993.
1993, is to be precise. The amendment to 6209 has to do with the elimination of the requirement in our rules and regulations that potential voting system vendors disclose to us their political contributions. That runs afoul of Section 73 of the Public Officers Law, which prohibits a state officer from inquiring as to political contributions. We propose to adopt both of these amendments on a consensus basis, which in English means on the short way home, because we don't conceive that anyone will object to us simply conforming with the law. It will be published in the State Register, and 45 days thereafter, the board can vote on the amendments. Similarly, we, at the last meeting, I think, we voted on a consensus basis to amend those sections of the regulations which indicated that the office of the board was either at 99 Washington Avenue or at 40 Steuben. The 45-day period since publication has not yet passed. That's why we're not voting on that today.
I move the resolution.
Second.
In favor?
Yeah.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Our next meeting is scheduled for August the 8th. I'm not concluding, just 7th.
Did it again.
I've done that. August the 7th, it's still August the 7th. We have potential for executive session if anyone has any questions or need for any further discussion. Otherwise, we'll accept a motion on the preliminary determinations.
There was one preliminary determination where I recommended that we open an investigation, which was CMP 1110.
Yeah.
Do we want,
And-
is this for discussion?
Okay, so let's approve all of them except CMP 1110.
Yeah, I agree with that.
CMP.
1110.
Table the last two on the list as well. If you could discuss that in executive session, that'd be great.
Yes.
All right, so which ones are we voting on right now? Bill, you want to give us the list of what we're actually
It
going to
would
adopt?
be the first three on the list.
04, 08, and 21?
No, it'd be 1204, 1122, and 1121.
All right, so moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now you want to go into executive session
All right.
for the remainders, or?
Right, and let's leave open the possibility that we may want to vote on them after the executive
Have a
session.
motion to go into executive session?
Just
Yeah.
before
Excuse me?
that, maybe, I know from our calendar, just to make sure we try and firm up the dates that we need in order to keep the political calendar deadline to meet Judge Sharp's certification. We also need one on Wednesdays, a board meeting, Wednesday,
Oh, for
September 12th.
Okay, September, good point.
We may need another one later in September as a tentative date, either September 27th or approximately.
So-
But we think that one we might be able to do as one of those web meetings,
Right.
because it should be a limited. So we need August 7th.
And
we
September
need
12th.
September 12th.
Okay.
Because we have to certify the federal candidates on
There
primary
wasn't
day.
another one in June that we had to come up to certify?
Uh,
No?
No,
I
that's
missed
the end
it.
of September.
So-
Okay, I had something on my calendar.
So we're not meeting in July, but we do have the conference at the end of July.
July 31st, August 1st or 2nd.
Oh, I'm not so sure.
It's,
That's
A
the
little late to
conference.
get
You don't
those
have to go to the
dates.
conference.
it's
I like a
problematic
conference,
for us
though.
because we're
Right.
dealing with,
Huh?
we'll be hit these petition challenges.
August
So our
7th,
presence
September
will be
12th.
severely limited.
Where, I didn't, where is it going to be?
Cortland.
It's in Cortland County at a,
Is there a direct way to get to Cortland County?
it's about 3 hours and 45 minutes from here when I did map
By
quest.
car?
They drop you in by helicopter.
Okay, for
It's
your
a
calendars.
Lovely place.
Put your,
Fine
next-
people.
Next meeting date, August 7th, followed by September 12th, possibly followed by another
Right, maybe
in
on the
September.
27th, right.
We did have a motion to go into executive session. Does there have a second? And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried? We will go into executive session.